After weeks of bitter infighting, scathing jabs and heated debates, UK's Conservative Party has announced its new leader. Liz Truss will take charge as the next British Prime Minister on Tuesday. The Tory leadership results were announced by 1922 committee chair Sir Graham Brady at the Queen Elizabeth II Centre, Central London.
I, Sir Graham Brady, the returning officer for the Conservative and Unionist Party leadership election, declare that the total number of eligible voters was 172,437. The turnout in the election was 82.6%. The total number of votes rejected was 654. The total number of valid votes given to each candidate was as follows. Rishi Sunak, 60,399. Lizz Truss, 81,326. Therefore, I give notice that Lizz Truss is elected as the leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party. Will come up on stage.
Truss will now become UK's third female Prime Minister following Margaret Thatcher and Theresa May. Giving her victory speech, Liz Truss reiterated her promise of big tax cuts in the coming years and also thanked her predecessor Boris Johnson for his tenure.
During this leadership campaign, I campaigned as a Conservative and I will govern as a Conservative. And my friends, we need to show that we will deliver over the next 2 years. I will deliver a bold plan to cut taxes and grow our economy. I will deliver on the energy crisis, dealing with people's energy bills, but also dealing with the long-term issues we have on energy supply. I think we have shown the depth and breadth of talent in our Conservative Party. And I also want to thank our outgoing leader, my friend, Boris Johnson. Boris, you got Brexit done. You crushed Jeremy Corbyn. You rolled out the vaccine and you stood up to Vladimir Putin. You were admired from Kiev to Carlisle.
Well, our correspondent Alex Aizat is joining us live from London. Hi, Alex. Take us through the transition process. What happens now after Truss was elected to succeed Boris Johnson?
Well, nothing we're expecting to the rest of today. There's already been a few tweets from former PMs, Theresa May, Boris and David Cameron as well have already tweeted the congratulations. So what we're expecting now is for Truss to gather her close colleagues and figure out exactly who she wants on her team going forward. And then she'll probably be heading up to Scotland tomorrow to meet the Queen at Balmoral, which was breaking from tradition because she usually heads over to Buckingham Palace to appoint the new Prime Minister. But that will happen in Balmoral because she has currently health issues. Then we'll expect on Wednesday to have maybe a bit more of a formal announcement to find out who exactly is going to be in that cabinet. We may even get it later on Tuesday. But what we will see is a real diverse range of people that Truss will have as her right-hand men and women going forward. And then on Wednesday, we will have Prime Minister's questions, where she'll face Keir Starmer for the first time, just behind me in the House of Commons there. And we'll hear probably from him about what exactly is she going to be doing about this cost of living crisis, because that's what everybody wants to know. What exactly are these policies? Are you going to be putting £100 billion? Where is it going to go? How are we going to cover our costs? Are you going to freeze all of these caps too? So all of these questions will be asked on Wednesday, no doubt. And hopefully we'll get some answers then.
Alex Aizat, stay with me because I want us to talk more about this latest update, and congratulatory messages have started pouring in for Liz Truss, the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Leadership contender Rishi Sunak said right now we should unite behind the new Prime Minister Liz Truss as she steers the country through difficult times, adding the Conservatives are all one family. Congratulating her successor, outgoing Prime Minister Boris Johnson tweeted, "Truss has the right plan to tackle the cost of living crisis, unite our party and continue the great work of uniting and levelling up our country," adding it was time for all Conservatives to get behind her 100%. Former Prime Minister David Cameron has also weighed in on the victory. He said in a time of challenge and global uncertainty, he wishes the Truss government well. Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon also congratulated Truss on her victory. In a tweet, she said, "Our political differences are deep, but I will seek to build a good working relationship with her as I did with last 3 Prime Ministers." Sturgeon also called on Truss to freeze energy bills for people and businesses, deliver more cash support and increase funding for public services. Our correspondent Alex Isaac, thank you very much for staying on. Truss says she will continue with the Conservative legacy. What are some of the reactions from the Labour Party and Britons as a whole?
Well, some of those legacies have let the Conservative Party get us into that situation where we are in this cost of living crisis. Of course, we had a COVID pandemic, which meant that we were helping furlough from our own troughs. So therefore, we've had a deficit on finances, and followed then by the war in Ukraine. There's been a lot of issues with money, and that is the legacy that Truss will have to deal with, and that is what Labour keeps bringing up. The fact that they believe that if they had been in power, things would have been different. Whether or not that would have been true, it's unlikely we'll ever know the answers to that. But Truss is going to be trying to push forward to try and figure out how she can make sure that everybody is on an equal footing, and that potentially we're going to be seeing things a bit more positive. Maybe not next week, maybe not next month, but she's hopeful that maybe in the new year. But Labour will be trying to break all of those policies apart when we find out what they are, and then compare them to Boris Johnson's legacy. We're talking about the NHS, the waiting times that we had too long to be dealing with, and all the money that needs to go into all of the areas of healthcare and education. Hence, we've got these strikes that are coming up. So anything that Truss does, it will need to be a radical change and a departure from that legacy that Boris Johnson left behind, as Labour will keep bringing that back up for the future.
Live from London, our correspondent Alex Isaac. Thank you. Truss will arrive at the Downing Street tomorrow with a long list of challenges staring right at her. UK's current cost of living crisis, fueled by soaring energy prices, will be the biggest challenge the next Prime Minister will have to face head-on. Throughout her campaign, Truss promised to take action to deal with surging energy costs, but the reality in Britain cannot be solved by mere promises. UK's cost of living crisis got worse when the leadership race was underway, and it will be undeniably get grimmer as winter nears. Driven by the war in Ukraine, energy prices are set to rise in October, effectively making electricity unaffordable for several British households. Charities have warned vulnerable households might have to take a choice or make a choice between heating their homes or having their meals this winter. Inflation in the United Kingdom is already at 40-year high. The Bank of England has warned the inflation numbers will rise over 13% by the end of 2022, that is this year, making a recession likely. While the world's leading financial firms have said UK's inflation numbers will cross record 15% in January next year. Mark Brolin is a geopolitical strategist and economist and also an author. He is now joining us to talk more about the state of economy in the United Kingdom. Mark, welcome to WION.
Thank you.
What is Liz Truss inheriting, and will she be able to handle the pressure?
Well, she's inheriting, as you have been saying here for several minutes, a great mess. And if she will be able to handle it, she knows that she will have to deliver, otherwise she will not win the general election, which is coming up already in 2024. She's actually quite short time span. And in a few minutes speech she gave a while ago, she was talking about deliver, 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 which again highlights that she really has to improve results. Otherwise, she will be toast. And that's why she's probably, I think there's going to be a right-wing, left-wing traditional battle lines which are coming up now, because she's going to depend more on the free markets, just like Margaret Thatcher did, and of course Labour will go the other way. So we will come back to a situation which is more traditional right-wing, left-wing. So it will be very tribal, very fierce, and where we have seen lots of the Boris bashing over the last years, we will now see lots of Truss bashing. So it will be fierce, yes, but before it gets better, it's going to get worse. And for her chances of staying on will have to mean that she will be able to make things worse before the election.
Mark, is it too early to predict her leadership qualities, you think?
Well, I think she will be more like Ronald Reagan in a way, that she will not be centralizing powers as much as Boris Johnson did. She will be more delegating powers. So it's probably quite different leadership style. And she has talked about slimming down Downing Street, all the people actually working within number 10 Downing Street, and decentralize powers a bit to the department. So I think we will... it's still to be seen if this is going to happen, but that's what all the rumours so far suggest.
Live from London, Mark Brolin, thank you very much for making time and for talking to WION today.
Thank you.
Now, since the start of 2022, deep divisions in the Tory party became clear to the world. First, it was the internal backlash to Boris Johnson's COVID scandals. Then there was an entire row on how Johnson let Chris Pincher get elected as the party whip, even after being aware of his sexual misconduct scandals. The Pincher scandal led to a cabinet bloodbath triggered by resignation of the then Chancellor Rishi Sunak. The scandal was the last nail in Johnson's premiership coffin. The leadership is now gone, but the controversies will continue in future. The Privileges Committee will soon probe into whether Boris Johnson misled members of Parliament over Downing Street parties. If the Committee of Members of Parliament recommend a punishment for Johnson, MPs will need to vote on it. It will then be left to incoming Prime Minister Lizz Truss on whether she wants Tory members of Parliament to vote how they want, or to instruct them of voting a certain way. A whip like this will likely anger Johnson's loyalists, who already aren't very keen on Truss. Well, Lizz Truss is expected to take charge as the next British Prime Minister this Tuesday. The Tory leadership results were announced by the 1922 committee chair, Sir Graham Brady, at the Queen Elizabeth II Centre at central London. Now, we do understand that Truss will now become UK's third female Prime Minister following Margaret Thatcher and Theresa May. Giving her victory speech, Lizz Truss reiterated her promise of big tax cuts in the coming years and also thanked her predecessor Boris Johnson for his tenure, saying that she will deliver, deliver, deliver. Joining us now is Kadira Pethiagoda, an international affairs expert from London. Unite was a word that echoed in all congratulatory messages to Lizz Truss. But in the last few months, the world has seen the deepest divisions in the Tory party. The contest itself was bitter in a larger sense and scale. How hard do you think will be Truss's job to bring together the Conservative Party now that she's the new leader?
Yes, I think there will be several challenges for her. I think the contest exposed several fissures. Firstly, between MPs and the members. While the MPs overwhelmingly chose Rishi, the members, by and large, chose Lizz. though not as largely by as large a margin as some had predicted. Secondly, you've seen divisions between the party and the general public. Truss is quite popular amongst the members of the party, but very unpopular amongst the general public. And you've seen issues raised by members of the party, like particular long-range missiles and weapon systems to Ukraine, things that the ordinary public have very little interest in. And thirdly, I think you've seen some divisions in terms of the Indian diaspora. So you've had, the Indian diaspora moving closer and closer to the Tory party over several decades. And now you've had a highly, exceptionally qualified candidate in Rishi Sunak being rejected out of hand, and would leave some Indian diaspora members wondering what's their actual place in the Conservative Party.
Kadira, in the last few days, there have been reports of Boris Johnson eyeing a populist comeback. How real is the possibility in the near future, you think?
Well, he is a very, charismatic politician, and I think he's still popular with certain elements of his base. I would say he has squandered a lot of his populist credentials, though, with his focus on Ukraine while the people in his own country were suffering. And I think this is not something that Trump has done in the US. And you've seen that already with the populist right being, amongst the first to question the West's sort of foreign policy position at the moment. So I think if he is to make a comeback, he'd have to change some of his positions.
Finally, Britain has seen a summer of strikes, which will likely continue in the coming weeks. Several unions are protesting today and tomorrow, while others have planned a walkout in the coming days. How will Truss likely handle this challenge?
Well, in the past and during the campaigns, she said she'd take a very harsh line on striking unions. But I think this risks increasing the issue and perhaps even a general strike that could paralyze the country. I mean, we're really on the precipice of unprecedented civil uprisings. You've got, protests going on throughout Western Europe. In the Czech Republic, there are 100,000 people protesting against energy prices and the sanctions as well. So I think to really resolve the strikes, Liz Truss is going to probably have to stray away from the standard Tory playbook. She might have to look at things like, even threatening nationalisation of utilities, raising wages, and perhaps reducing the sanctions as well. And these are not things that she had said she would do during the contest, but I think there is possibility for her to change, given that she would have been really presenting herself to the Tory membership then, and now she has to do so for the general public.
We'll have to
I might just add that she, in the past, has changed her political stripes at points, so that leaves this possibility open.
All right. We'll have to leave this conversation there. I've been talking to Kadira Pethiagoda. Thank you, as always, for making time and talking to WION today.
Thank you.
After issues in the Conservative Party, let us look at the challenges Truss will be facing at home and overseas. First is the ongoing war in Ukraine. Boris Johnson has been a strong ally for Ukraine since the war began in late February. He has sent aid to the country, both military and humanitarian, and also among the first leaders to visit Kyiv after the invasion. Whether Truss will follow her predecessor's path for Ukrainian support or focus at home is yet to be seen. Over to the row on Northern Ireland Protocol. Recent reports claim Truss might trigger Article 16 proceedings against the European Union days after taking charge as the Prime Minister. Truss has reportedly received fresh advice from trade and legal experts about invoking the emergency clause contained in the post-Brexit deal. Meanwhile, the deadline is closing in for the United Kingdom to respond to legal proceedings launched against it by the EU for failing to implement proper Irish sea border checks. Amid the claims, Ireland has warned a trade war with the EU over the Northern Ireland Protocol, which is the last thing Britain needs during the cost of living crisis. Next is the issue of Scottish referendum. During her sole hustings In Scotland, Lizz Truss made it clear that she is not in support of another Scottish independence vote and will not allow for a second referendum within a decade.
Delivering for the whole United, so the ECHR can't overrule our domestic decisions.
Tuesday will be a busy day in Scotland. Queen Elizabeth II is at the Balmoral Castle, the Royal Scottish Retreat, where the handover ceremony will take place. Buckingham Palace says she will not be travelling to London due to mobility issues. Boris Johnson will first be visiting Balmoral to tender his resignation, following which the Queen will be receiving Lizz Truss as the next Prime Minister in the Kiss of the Hand ceremony. In the ceremony, Truss will be asked by the Queen a government in her name. This will be the first time in her tenure that the Queen will not be receiving the next Prime Minister in central London. She would normally appoint Prime Ministers from Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle. However, this time, the 96-year-old monarch has been advised against travel and to remain at her Balmoral residence, where she is enjoying her summer holiday. A busy few days for the United Kingdom. Even so, for number 10's famous feline, Larry the cat was shot roaming outside the 10 Downing Street as the Conservative chair announced the new party leader, who will soon be Larry's housemate.
The police officers down here arrest the criminals and not the victims. I myself was standing up against the COVID fraud and been arrested with a day of pundits, of the elites. The government need that for the new agenda. As bad as this. Never in our lives have our children be threatened with vaccines that are killing them. If you want to prove
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.